Big night at Levi's Stadium where the new 4K video boards, the largest of their kind in the entire NFL, 71% larger than the old video boards here, were inaugurated.
Fair to say that these video boards and the new light show that's going to happen after every 49ers touchdown in prime time are very aesthetically pleasing. Just like Brock Purdy to Ricky Pearsall at practice yesterday against the Broncos. I don't think that Purdy could have run up to Pearsall and handed him the football in a better spot to beat Jahdae Barron, first-round pick, new cornerback for Denver. So it was a really, really busy day at the team facility because later on the 49ers were able to unveil all of these improvements, $200 million worth of improvements to Levi's Stadium. I even got to look into the control room. We'll take a longer peek into there in a little bit. Want to talk about practice and the other side of the ball because, on the San Francisco Standard, I wrote about Purdy and the offense. Denver controlled the first part of practice. Then the 49ers struck back. I guess it's fitting, by the way, that this room is called the Death Star, brand new Levi's Stadium video control room with 49 screens. But the 49ers did strike back with a vengeance. 2 move the ball drives in that practice, 2 touchdown drives for Purdy and company. First to Pearsall, then to Demarcus Robinson. But more on that later because we didn't get a chance to firmly talk about the defense yesterday. And Tim Kawakami wrote about the 49ers performance on the other side of the field. That is now up on the San Francisco Standard. Nick Bosa flexed this time. He'd missed a couple practices due to soreness, but the 49ers really, really needed him for this joint session against the Broncos, especially after Michael Williams had to exit with the knee issue. The 49ers think that it's decent news on Michael Williams. Their initial tests came back pointing in a positive direction. They think it's probably just a hyperextension of his knee, but Michael's still going to miss some time, and it all underscores how important Bosa is to this defensive line. Because when the 49ers reconstructed this roster, especially on the defensive side of the ball, they did it around 3 foundational load-bearing pillars, right? They were okay with overhauling entire position units except for one key player at those position units. And Bosa is that guy on the defensive line. Fred Warner is that guy at the linebacker position. And then I'd say Diamaro Lenore and Malik Mustafa are the guys in the secondary. So Bosa is the load-bearing wall of the 49ers defensive line. And based on everything that we've seen so far in training camp, and then especially yesterday, Tim wrote about this in his piece on the Standard. It really, really does look like Bosa is gearing up for, shall we say, a career year. I know that he had over 18 sacks in the 2022 season, so it's career year is a high bar for Nick Bosa, but it really does seem that he's locked in at a slightly higher level than even other years. And I think that Bosa has always been prepared to deliver big numbers. That's why he's been at the top of the league in terms of pressures for the 49ers year in and year out. But this training camp performance, the noise that he's making, even when the help hasn't fully been there, and that was the case yesterday with a lot of these 49ers injuries, the thinness of the defensive line, the noise that he's making does seem to reverberate a little bit louder than usual. Bosa is going to be huge for San Francisco this year. He obviously has the bookend in Bryce Huff for pass rushing situations, but I think that I'm always going to circle back to this. The run defense for the 49ers is going to be the major test, and it's going to be the major determinant of whether or not Bosa has a chance to approach his career high sack total. Because last year, the ranking number 29 in run defense will mean that you're just not in position to rush the quarterback. You just don't have enough 3rd and 6 plus. You don't have enough 2nd and 7 plus. You have to deliver on the first down and the second down run defense to set up the pass rushing situations. The 49ers' entire success of their defense is predicated on that in 2025. They go out and they trade for Bryce Huff, who's a lighter edge rusher, somebody who's not known for playing the run. They want to use Bryce Huff on his 30% of the snaps to just pin his ears back and get after the quarterback with the get off that he has to bookend Nick Bosa. You can't use Bryce Huff nearly enough if your run defense is as bad as it was in 2024. Another key development on the defensive side is that the 49ers saw both Alfred Collins and CJ West formally fill in with that first team against the Broncos at defensive tackle. Now, this was by necessity. No Jordan Elliott for the 49ers, no Kevin Givens for the 49ers, no Evan Anderson for San Francisco. Now, they expect Jordan Elliott and Evan Anderson to be back relatively soon. They don't expect Kevin Givens to be back relatively soon. So there's going to be reliance here on the rookies. There's going to be reliance on somebody like Kalia Davis. There's probably going to be more transactions coming down the pipeline for the 49ers to get through these dog days of August at defensive tackle. But I just think that one of the main demands that the 49ers had of their youngsters, and that was to show up and start delivering quality snaps sooner rather than later, that is further crystallized by the health situation that the 49ers are going through up front. When they spent 5 picks, their first 5 picks on defensive players, including 3 on defensive linemen and 2 on defensive tackles, Alfred Collins in the second round and CJ West on the fourth round, then that was shortly after releasing Javon Hargrave and releasing Malik Collins. The message was clear. The 49ers wanted to get younger, faster, healthier, hungrier up front, and they wanted to get better against the run up front. And then you guys were going to have to contribute early. Maybe not start early, but contribute early. And yesterday, symbolically, when you see Alfred Collins and you see CJ West up there, working in with Bosa, working in with that first team, you're like, okay, well, the time is here. Are they ready? Well, we're going to get to see a little bit more tomorrow against the Broncos. That's going to be the preseason opener for the 49ers. And I always said the joint practice, that's the reason I watch the offensive side of the field, is because we're not going to see Purdy tomorrow. We're not going to see Christian McCaffrey tomorrow. But we are going to be able to watch Alfred Collins and CJ West operate now in a game situation for the first time at the NFL level. And Alfred Collins, I'll say that day over day, he is improving. I mean, that was his best session of one-on-ones against Denver. And he won with power. I thought that he won a couple times with speed yesterday. Early on in his one-on-one journey, so this was probably a week and a half ago at this point, once the pads came on, Alfred Collins was not winning a whole lot in one-on-ones. And then over the course of the past week, you could tell he's getting his legs underneath him. He's starting to get more confident. He's starting to understand how to distribute the weight in that 6'5", 332-pound frame. And that's huge for the 49ers. And they've got a month. They got a month before week 1 in Seattle. This is going to be a critical month for Collins to continue building on the progress that he's obviously made over the course of the past week. CJ West wowed everybody on the first day with pads because he's just got a natural gift to push offensive linemen backwards. The question now is, we know that West is strong. The question is, can he refine his counter moves to the point where he's not a liability in any way on a down in, down out basis? Doesn't get washed in because he's too aggressive. Doesn't start losing some of these pass rushing reps because he doesn't have anything else to go to counterbalance just the pure power that he brings. I've talked about a spin move that CJ West showed, I think, on the first or second day of pads. That was really impressive. So he's obviously not a one-trick pony, but he's going to have to find a way to corral those tricks and outfox some offensive linemen to become a down-in and down-out player. And I think so much of that journey is going to begin tomorrow night, because you've got to be in a real game situation instead of just these one-on-ones and team drills. I get that they do some move the ball work, and that helped yesterday for the 49ers, but a real game situation is when the strategy, the chess match, really truly blossoms. So CJ West, Alfred Collins, I think 2 big 49ers defensive stories. Of course, we've been talking so much about Upton Stout. I went out to Western Kentucky to talk to Tyson Helton, his head coach. This was after the NFL draft. And it just strikes me that every single thing that we talked about in a 45-minute interview when I went out to Upton Stout's alma mater, every single virtue that he showed in college is showing up immediately for the 49ers. He plays bigger than his 5'8" frame. He plays like a dog. He's got that really hungry mentality. One thing that Tyson Helton told me when I was out there in Western Kentucky is that the guy always sits in the front row of every meeting, and his eyes are locked on the coach who's speaking like missile lock. And he's just sitting there absorbing information. The only way that you vault up a depth chart, the way that Upton Stout has vaulted up the 49ers depth chart, and I think essentially, I don't want to say he's locked up the nickel spot because he hasn't, but he's firmly in that first team conversation right now, and we're just over 2 weeks into this. The only way the third round pick is able to do that this quickly. Remember Malik Mustafa last year, fourth round pick, sensational year as a rookie, but he didn't start until a few weeks into the season. But the only way that you do this is Upton Stout is if you are completely and totally bought in and absorbing the information that they're feeding you, and then you're drinking it out of a fire hose when you're a rookie at the NFL level. And the people at Western Kentucky said that he'd be capable of absorbing the information very, very quickly. But I think that even the 49ers might be pleasantly surprised with how fast Upton Stout is digesting all this stuff. And I would even say, and this is something that there might be some disagreement on, but the way that I look at the league right now, offensive players have downsized so much, especially some of the quickness-based players, some of your slot receivers, your running backs, and there's obviously hybrids between both. But Upton Stout's 5'8" height, I think in some instances can actually be an advantage. And that's why the 49ers want to play him inside. And I know he's played taller on the outside, and he's made some of those Superman acrobatic plays, those pass breakups on the perimeter, first against Ricky Pearsall. And then yesterday he had a nice interception during one-on-ones where he also laid out and played taller than he actually is. But on the inside, you've got to have the agility to cover some of these shorter, very quick 3-cone kind of guys where they're built on COD, change of direction. But two, if you're running creative blitzes as Robert Saleh, if you're trying to plug the run game with a nickel back who's just a problem to block, I think sometimes flying under the radar, opposing quarterback can't see you in the midst of all those big bodies. Big offensive linemen have trouble, maneuvering to block you so you could slip by them. I think flying under the radar at 5'8" could be an advantage, especially if you're built thick enough, like Upton Stout is, to handle some of the inevitable contact in there. So I look at his height and weight, which the height's 5'8", but he's over 200, so he's got the miniature linebacker's frame. I look at that, if you deploy Upton Stout correctly, I look at that as a potential advantage. And I cannot wait to see how he tackles during some of these preseason games where the 49ers are finally going to be able to bring players to the ground, because I think that's going to be a huge, huge part of the Upton Stout experience is his physicality, and he hasn't been able to fully showcase it yet. And sometimes, rookies have to adapt to the NFL level where things are moving at a different speed to successfully bring guys fully to the ground. And Fred Warner had to go through that adaptation. He wasn't a great tackler early in his career and obviously turned into a future Hall of Fame player after a couple years. And that's one area where the 49ers are going to have to get these rookies up to speed. I think in general, we need to look at things in the big picture. And the 49ers this season, when I talk about the formula for this football team, I think it's really clear that the offense is going to have to drive this train just because the defense has so many young pieces, and Robert Saleh is going to be experimenting. He's going to be trying to find a way to make things work. Look at what the Rams did. They had all those draft picks. Most of them were on the defensive side of the ball. They focused so many on the defensive line. The stat that I brought up a few times that I have to hammer home now, if we're going to use it as a reference point, is that the Rams, through the first 3 months of the 2024 season, their defense ranked number 29 in the league by expected points added. Over the final 2 months, the Rams morphed and developed and grew into the number 5 unit in all football. For number 29 over the first 3 months, number 5 over the last 2 months. So they had to have their offense command the ship for the majority of the season before the defense was seasoned enough and ready enough to do their thing down the stretch. I think that the 49ers are going to have a similar flavor this year because you've got more experience on the offensive side of the ball. You obviously have Brock Purdy, you've got McCaffrey, you've got Pearsall doing what he's doing now. Yesterday on the drive where the 49ers really got it going, Pearsall first beat Patrick Surtain II on third down on the out pattern, and then he made that really nice catch off the beautiful throw from Brock Purdy against Jahdae Barron. I mean, it was a Ricky Pearsall drive, right? And they're going to have Ricky Pearsall drives this year, especially until Jawan Jennings is back out there and Brandon Ayuk is back out there. And maybe Demarcus Robinson misses some time at the start of the year. So, I mean, the 49ers have established weapons and establishing weapons like Ricky Pearsall to be able to get them through rough times on the offensive side of the ball because they're going to frame things around Purdy and McCaffrey and George Kittle. I think what we saw yesterday against what might be the best defense in the league over those two move the ball drives showed that this offense has the capability of being a locomotive that pulls the train. The defense is going to have to develop to follow suit. The special teams can't screw things up like they did in 2024. But that's how the big picture construction of this team is going to have to be. At the end of the day, football is always a complementary effort once we get to Sundays in fall. And this season, the equation might be even a bit more complicated than usual for the 49ers. So perhaps it's fitting that we got to take a peek into that control room yesterday at Levi's Stadium. Massive, massive project. Remember, Levi's is going to be the first stadium ever to host both the Super Bowl and the World Cup in the same year. So the Death Star is going to be really busy.
So that scene was shot in the TV studio in Sacramento, where they said, you know, you may fire when ready, and the guy hits the T-bar. So that was a Grass Valley 100, I think it was, video switcher. And so a lot of control rooms just have some sort of Star Wars theme baked into it. Maybe there's a Yoda sitting there for, you know, just the Force or whatever.
I mean, it's an absolute dream, right? We're in the heart of Silicon Valley. It's, you know, innovation is a part of not only this area, but a part of the 49ers. And so when you have the product on the field, when you have the team that's performing, and then you have the production that we have in this room, it's an absolute dream to be able to do this, to work with state-of-the-art technology. It's great.